Hey everybody, I'm back and I have a review and a little bit of a rant in regards to Maul Shadow Lord episodes 1 and 2. Now, the show itself is fine. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I like the dynamic of Maul leading this criminal organization where he is starting to manipulate them to start these kind of civil wars so that he can take over. And I really enjoy that aspect of it, and I think that's an interesting story to tell, also interweaved with him capturing this youngling Jedi training, and obviously this is leading to him trying to give himself an apprentice, and all of this kind of being machinations towards revenge against Darth Sidious. I love all that. The side plot with the cop, we'll see where that goes. That's the weakest part of the show. But all in all, I mean, as with most of these shows, the animation is gorgeous, and the story they're telling is interesting. Now, I have a bit of a rant here, because as much as I enjoyed it, this is, for lack of better phrasing, and I'm going to be a little crude here, this is one giant cock tease, if ever there was one. I've made no bones about the fact that I feel one of the biggest crimes to cinema ever committed is the fact that Bob Iger was presented 3 new George Lucas penned stories for Star Wars with his treatments for 7, 8, and 9. And he decided to just throw those over the shoulder and go with nostalgia bait. And not just 3 Star Wars stories by George Lucas, but 3 Star Wars stories that many of us have been waiting our entire lives for, that included Han, Luke, and Leia. And we will never get those the way that George envisioned them, because Bob Iger thought he knew better. And the reason I feel this way about this show is because this whole thing is like a prequel to what George laid out, with Maul being the head of the criminal underground, with a apprentice, Darth Talon, who's going to be like the Darth Vader of the new trilogy. And the show very much reads like the setup to that. So what are we doing? This is something I ask as a lifelong Star Wars fan, who, once it came out that what we got in the sequel trilogy was not what George wanted, that George had a firm outline, a firm story of what 7, 8, and 9 were supposed to be, and that it was trashed. And look, I enjoy the sequel trilogy, warts and all. Yeah, Rise of Skywalker is definitely the worst of the 3, but they're enjoyable for what they are. But they aren't what we should have gotten. And now, what's the payoff? What are we doing? Because here's my thing. If this is leading towards a episode 10, 11, 12 that is essentially George's treatments, just we aren't going to have Maul in it. It's going to be Talon kind of ruling on high, coming out and, unveiling herself as the, new Sith Lord. I'm fine with that. And then we get what George's treatments essentially were, just kind of retooled to fit the framework of what we have. Then I'm fine with this. But you need to come out and say that's what you're doing. That everything you're doing right now is to reset the table for George's vision of what the closeout of the Skywalker story was supposed to be. And if that's what you're doing, just tell us. We don't need a surprise around this. Tell us what you're doing. Because at this point, the secrecy doesn't matter. I understand you want big moments, big surprises, and we'll get those as the story unfolds. You don't have to give us beat for beat what is going on. At this point, you're going to have to drastically change a lot of what George laid out. Carrie's gone. And you're not going to recast her or AI her into it. So you're going to have to change the whole Leia story arc. You killed Luke in the sequel trilogy. So any part that Luke had to play in George's treatments, he's going to have to be a Force ghost for. You killed Han. So any part that Han had to play in those treatments is out the window. You're going to have to retool Rey into these somehow. So we already know you're going to have to make changes to it. We understand that. And maybe that's part of what Starfighter ties into, because I don't buy that this is just a standalone movie that isn't tied into the greater storyline. I just don't buy that. And I don't buy that because of where things stand right now. We have Mandalorian and Grogu, which is continuing to fill in gaps between the sequel trilogy and the original trilogy. From, what we understand is everything, that's currently milling around in production hell right now. There's still Dave Filoni's Heir to the Empire, which is supposed to wrap up the whole Mandoverse stuff. There's supposedly a trilogy of, Rey movies that's still bubbling around in there, as well as the Rey Solo New Jedi Order movie. So if both of those are happening, and then of course Starfighter, which actually is happening, which takes place after 7, 8, and 9. If all of those things are happening, then we have 2 movies filling in gaps and possibly building up lore for whatever happens after episode 9. So filling in gaps between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, which could be laying threads for the post-sequel trilogy era. We have, if the Rey Solo movie and the Rey trilogy are both happening, because then we have Starfighter, which would be filling in gaps for post episode 9 and leading into whatever is coming next. You have a Rey movie that is setting up whatever is coming next. And then you have potentially, by all accounts, what most people would assume is episodes 10, 11, and 12. And then now we step backwards and we're doing Maul. But if we're not doing George's treatments as a new trilogy in the Skywalker saga, then what is the point of this show? What is the point? What is the point? Maul, as cool of a character as he is, and he's one of my favorite characters, the depths have been plumbed. There is no point or purpose in delving into this era of Maul being a criminal overlord unless you're going to do George's treatments. If not, what is the point? Because it's just going to lead to an unsatisfying ending. What, it's going to lead to the cameo in Solo that also went nowhere because you're not doing George's treatments. Like I said, none of that, none of Maul as head of Crimson Dawn means a damn thing if you're not doing George's treatments. And if you are going to do them, just tell us you're going to do them. I can't think of a single thing short of releasing 4Ks of the original unaltered trilogy that would excite Star Wars fans more than saying, you know what? Mea culpa. We screwed up. We never should have tossed George's treatments. We should have filmed them as he wrote them, and just, wrote the scripts out, worked with him to make sure it all lined up. And that's what we should have done. You didn't. We can't change the past. But if this is what you're doing, this is, my kind of imploring to Lucasfilm leadership. Just tell us that's what you're doing. Just tell us. We will be your biggest cheerleaders on this. But just tell us. Just tell us. Hey guys, we're doing George's treatments. Now, what you saw leaked, hey, you know what? We're going to have to change a lot of that because of circumstances. We also have to make it tie in to what we did. And we realized that was a big whoopsie daisy. But we got to, retool things. We got to make it fit in the universe now with what we've done. But we are sticking to what George wanted as best we can, while tweaking things so that it fits where the stage is set. Do that, and I guarantee you, Star Wars fans will cheerlead it more than anything. Like I said, the only thing that would be a bigger boon to Star Wars fans would be an official announcement that you're going to do physical releases of episodes 4, 5, and 6 as they were theatrically re-releases. The original unaltered trilogy on 4K Blu-ray. That and doing George's treatments, those are the 1 and 2 things you could do that would just unify the fan base and have everybody just being like, Star Wars is back. But again, if this isn't what you're doing, if you are not doing George's treatments as in episode 10, 11, 12, then this show is meaningless. It is fluff. It's a backstory to nothing. Nada. Zip. Zilch. Because there's no payoff. It's a big tease. Because we all know. We all know what George's treatments were now. We've known for years. So doing this is just rubbing our nose in the fact that you didn't do George's treatments. That you disrespected that man so much. And it's just rubbing our nose in it. So I don't know. I don't know what Disney and Lucasfilm think they're doing with this. Like I said, it's an enjoyable show. But it rings hollow. Because we all know that this is just rubbing our nose in what we could have had. And unless they come out and say this is what they're doing, what's the point? What is the point? Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.